From inside the Banner offices along the Inner Harbor, it is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer live on a Monday in December, Christmas Eve, to break down the Ravens' upcoming matchup against the Houston Texans. It is a quick turnaround for both players and podcasters alike. We are also going to go through the Ravens' Christmas wish list, some items that they are hoping for over the coming days and weeks. But first, the Banner Ravens podcast is brought to you by Toyota. Toyota has been building a legacy of excellence for years, from developing hybrid technology to upping the standards of safety and efficiency. Toyota is always innovating, always making progress. And with the superior lineup of in-stock SUVs, including the adventure-ready RAV4 and capable, affordable Corolla Cross, you can experience the legacy of Toyota for yourself. Visit buyatoyota.com, the official website for deals, to find out more. Toyota.
Don't miss the 2025 CIAA Men's and Women's Basketball Tournament in Baltimore, February 25th to March 1st at CFG Bank Arena. Watch HBCU teams battle to be crowned champion. Check out the free fan fest and performances at the Baltimore Convention Center. Enjoy downtown's top restaurants and stay in one of our amazing hotels. The CIAA Men's and Women's Basketball Tournament. You want to be here.
All right, Jonas, we're going to get to our holiday wish list for the Ravens. But first, we did get a comment after our last podcast, in which I said that M&T Bank Stadium needs to have a movie film there. You know, we saw how good it looked in the Kraven the Hunter trailer, and we thought, let's get a scene from a film here. Somebody commented on our YouTube page, and you can comment, write us a good review, write us a 5-star review, and I will read it out here on the show. Somebody did comment and point out that some of the film, The Replacements, was actually filmed at M&T Bank Stadium during halftime of a preseason game. I've never seen The Replacements. Maybe I'm exposing myself for not having seen enough football movies, but isn't that Keanu Reeves?
Yeah.
Have you?
Falco, I think is his last name. Shane Falco, maybe.
Okay.
I think I saw it in theaters when I was like 8, 10, 12, something in that range.
Do you remember the Ravens scene at all? Or
No.
Okay.
I don't think I knew what the Ravens were at that point.
Wow. You were just a wee lad.
Yeah, focused on the Washington Redskins and how they were ruining my life.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, I still want to see another newer film, and maybe they could have worked Kraven the Hunter in there. Maybe it would have had a higher rating than 15% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Should we see Kraven the Hunter? Should we make that a Banner Ravens podcast?
I think
trip?
we should. I think we should expense it too. I mean, also one of those weird movies. I looked at the Rotten Tomatoes where the dichotomy between the
Oh my God. Yeah.
audience score and the critic score. Critic score is horrendous, 15%. Audience score is 73%.
Like I think the same thing happened for the new Dwayne The Rock Johnson film, Red One. Yeah, I was gonna say Red Ones. I think there's like 15% on critics and like 90% on audience score. Yeah. Well, it I think they just said it came out was like the strongest release ever for a Netflix movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, we are going to have a Netflix conversation later on in this podcast because Wednesday's game is going to be broadcast on Netflix. What an experience that'll be. But first, let's get to our Christmas wish list for the Baltimore Ravens, who are coming off an impressive, a decisive win over the Pittsburgh Steelers at home on Saturday. And there are still some things that need to go right for this team. For them to claim the AFC North, they pulled into a tie with that win, but they still need a little bit of help. They need to win out and have the Steelers lose one of their 2 remaining games, or the Ravens lose one of their games and have the Steelers lose in Week 18. Jonas, what is the first item atop your wish list, and does it have to do with the Ravens playoff picture?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is a wish list, a gift that you're hoping the Ravens get, or just a lump of coal that the Steelers get. But obviously, you think about what is at stake on Wednesday. And as you said, Paul, the Ravens' playoff chances would definitely be helped if the Steelers lost again to the Kansas City Chiefs. That game kicks off at 1 o'clock on Christmas Day. As you said, if that happens, Ravens control their own destiny. They only need 1 win to get that top 4 seed, that AFC North title, hold off Pittsburgh. It seems like the Chiefs should be feeling pretty good about where they are. I think Joey Porter Jr. is going to give it a shot. George Pickens is going to give it a shot. But I think we saw the Chiefs finally step up their game a little bit next week, even though I believe they're playing in Pittsburgh, right?
It's not at Arrowhead.
It's not at Arrowhead, so that'll make it tougher. And obviously, great home field advantage there, but I would imagine that the Chiefs are probably the early favorites in that one.
Yeah, that would help the Ravens a lot. Now it's not like the Steelers lose that game and all the Ravens need to do is win that 4:30 game. I'm sure some people in that Ravens locker room will be vaguely aware of the score of the Steelers game, but they're not going to pay attention to that at all.
Well, I mean, Kyle Hamilton said yesterday he has no honest indication of what the hell is happening with the tiebreakers. He's clearly not reading our coverage. He's clearly not
come on.
Playing with spending every waking hour playing with the New York Times playoff calculator like I am. These guys have so much on their plates between third game in 11 days, practice,
Christmas cookies,
Christmas cookies, Christmas shopping, that they have no clue. They're just going to let the chips fall where they may. And I mean, as of right now, they're probably falling in the Ravens' favor because, like I said, I think most people have them currently as the slight favorite to win the AFC North.
Yeah. Next on my Christmas wish list for the Ravens is a rejuvenated Justin Tucker, who went 2 for 2 on field goal attempts on Saturday. One was beyond 50 yards. Last 2 games after the bye, 9 for 9 on extra points, 2 for 2 on field goals. What do you make of the Jordan Stout being used on kickoffs over the last couple of weeks? Do you think that that's maybe just an indication that the Ravens at this point in Justin Tucker's career believe that he has a slightly weaker leg than Jordan Stout, and they just want Jordan Stout to kick it deep?
Yeah, we didn't get a chance to ask Harbaugh, or we didn't ask Harbaugh yesterday about the lone Stout kickoff on Saturday. I think the weather was probably a factor in all that. Just the wind was ripping around. Pre-game, it was really tough to even get the ball to the uprights when you're kicking from 50 because of all the headwinds that they were kicking into. So maybe there was some of that. You just want the stronger leg of Jordan Stout to make sure you're blasting that thing out.
Does he have a stronger leg at this point, do you think?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I mean,
which is weird to say from the guy who
when you're kicking off
the record for.
I mean, I remember I know punting and kicking are not the same thing, but when you look at what he's doing in offseason workouts on Instagram, he's crushing the ball like 70, 75 yards. And, if you can get a tee, then it's a big help. So he's probably a better athlete at this point than Justin Tucker in the open field. So if there is the chance of a guy breaking to that second level, third level, you feel maybe a little bit better about Jordan Stout being the guy to tackle someone than Justin Tucker. Not that Justin Tucker hasn't acquitted himself decently well there, but
especially in the Craven the Hunter trailer, he absolutely demolished a guy at the goal line.
I don't think I saw that.
Also, only you, Jonas, would be watching off-season workout Instagram videos of the punter.
What
Jordan
else am I
Stout.
going to watch?
Anything else? Baseball. How about baseball during
if it's on my Instagram story, I'm going to watch it.
That's a terrible strategy. But essentially, whether he's used on kickoffs or not, Justin Tucker needs to be better over the last couple weeks, and he needs to be better in the playoffs than he has over the course of the regular season. And maybe these last 2 games are a sign that during the bye week, he figured something out. He fixed whatever was ailing him. Because they're going to be, we've said before, in cold weather games, most likely, whether it's Baltimore, whether it's Kansas City, Buffalo, wherever, they're going to be in some cold weather games, and they're going to need to get the most out of Justin Tucker.
Yeah. Next on the wish list, and I guess this is kind of a matter of as a kid, did you want the Xbox or did you want the PlayStation? If the Ravens do get that 3rd seed, right now, the heavy favorite, according to the New York Times, I think the Chargers are 70% odds to be that second wildcard team, get the 6th, go against the 3rd seed. There's a slight chance that it could be the Steelers, obviously. There's a slight chance that it could be the Broncos. I think both are about 10%. But if you are the Ravens, which of those teams would you want to face as the number 3 seed going up against the number 6?
So you'd be hosting this team, obviously, and it would imply that you'd win the division. So the Steelers would have to lose one of their final 2 games, and the Ravens would have to win out. But if you are hosting that game, got to feel good about the Ravens' chances against the Broncos. I mean, the Ravens kicked the crap out of them 41-10 when they met in Week 9. That was at home, and the game against the Chargers was a much closer outcome. I mean, it was 30-23. I know the Chargers kind of scored late to make that a more palatable score, but you feel better about the Ravens matching up against the Broncos than matching up against the other Harbaugh. And in a playoff game, I tend to say bet on the worst, bet for the better quarterback to win the game when it comes down to it. And especially bet against rookie quarterbacks. Brock Purdy. Bo Nix has not looked good for a lot of the wins that the Broncos have had, despite the fact that he has been winning a lot of games. I
Right.
still don't think he's an above average quarterback in the NFL, and he's still a rookie. So I would much, much rather the Ravens face the Broncos than face the Chargers.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the Ravens, whether they're at home field, away, neutral field, they would, I think, be pretty substantial favorites over the Chargers. But they didn't face, against that Chargers defense, a healthy Khalil Mack. Denzel Perryman, who's a kind of hammerhead linebacker, was missing that one. Cam Hart, who's a nice rookie cornerback, was not available for that one. They caught some breaks, and they have made their own luck injury wise. They've been so much healthier than so many of these teams that they've played late in the season. But I think they're probably a higher upside than we saw from that Chargers defense. And I know they just 2 weeks ago got smacked by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
So the Ravens could probably have that same, similar level of success running the ball. They were really, really good with Derrick Henry a couple weeks ago in LA. I think they could probably be even better if what we saw on Saturday carries over into another potential rematch against the Chargers. But yeah, I'm not at this point. If I'm the Ravens and you consider, what Patrick Mahomes did last year, you want to avoid that quarterback that can be a superhero, and that is Justin Herbert. He's not just dotting people up, but he's taking matters into his own hands as a scrambler. We see just how tough he can be to bring down. Not Josh Allen tough, but still he can be a pain in the ass. And obviously, no one besides Ladd McConkey on that Chargers skill position roster is really scaring you. We don't know what J.K. Dobbins' situation is for the next couple of weeks. But even though it is Greg Roman calling the plays there, I still think you would much rather see Bo Nix. You would much rather probably see Russell Wilson than Justin Herbert being the one to potentially end your season.
And we've said it before, but if the Ravens win on Christmas and the playoffs field remains as it currently looks with the 7 teams that are supposed to get in, which would be the Chiefs, the Bills, the Steelers, the Texans, the Ravens, the Chargers, and the Broncos. If the Ravens win on Christmas, that means they will have beaten 5 of the 7 AFC playoff teams. The one they will have lost to is the Chiefs, and one of them is the Ravens. So they will be 5-1 against the
one
AFC.
of them is the Ravens?
Of the 7 teams that are in the playoffs. One of them is the Ravens.
Okay. Gotcha. I thought you were making a joke about how the Ravens have lost themselves.
Oh, beaten themselves? Yeah. I mean, you could say the Raiders game, the Ravens beat themselves.
Yes.
But essentially, the Ravens will be 5-1 if they win that game against AFC playoff teams.
Right.
So you feel good about any team, pretty much any matchup. You feel like the Ravens can win, unless it's the Chiefs and they have the 1 seed, so they have to bye anyway, probably. One more thing on the Ravens wish list. Can we still count Calais Campbell as a possibility for the Ravens? The Dolphins are still alive after they won the other day. They still have only an 8% chance of making the playoffs. Of course, all the reporting is that if they are eliminated from the playoffs, they will try to waive Calais Campbell, give him an opportunity to end up on a team that's going to be in the playoffs, and the Ravens would be very interested, and he could come back to Baltimore. At what point is it too late to incorporate a guy? I know he obviously has experience here. He knows he's a veteran. He can acquaint himself very well to a new system and figure stuff out. And with a pass rusher, it's not like he has to play every down.
Yep.
He can only play a handful of snaps. But would it be too late to try to add him to the defense if they get into, if the Dolphins remain alive for another week, and then we're talking about adding him before week 18 or before the playoffs?
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated. I think it definitely would have helped our understanding of this if the Dolphins had lost the 49ers yesterday.
They did not. Yeah.
And their next game is against the Browns and against DTR, who I think would also be on the Ravens wish list for being that Week 18 starter instead of Jameis Winston. So I would imagine that Miami would probably be favored in that one. But I think if the Broncos win and the Chargers win this coming weekend, then I think that effectively eliminates Miami. My understanding just from looking around, and I could be completely wrong on this, is that you can still release a player after the season ends. So technically,
really?
the Dolphins could, win on Sunday, need Calais for that final game, and let's say they don't get in. If they release him before, I think, the Wednesday of the first week of the playoffs, then if they beat that deadline, then the playoff rushers do not lock. So if they release him on, the Monday after the game and the Ravens pick him up on a Tuesday, or whoever picks him up on a Tuesday, then you can have him for that stretch run. But obviously you so rarely see teams just release players for the playoffs because of everything that goes into play. But that would be wild, because I mean, you think of what happened with Terrell Suggs a couple of years when he was on the Cardinals and wanted to be released and make his way back to the Ravens. And of course, that was the year with the Ravens were not losing at all. So he ended up with the Chiefs that year, even though they had, I think, only like 4 losses. And they also released him in mid-December. So it wasn't a situation where they were waiting until literally the end of the year to put him on waivers. And the Chiefs claimed him before the Ravens could, and that was the difference there. But it would be wild, fascinating, and just like a maybe unprecedented for someone of that quality to change teams that late in the season. I mean, I was looking back when I was kind of digging into this thing. Do you remember these, like the kind of weird news headline? Maybe, I guess it would have been during one of the COVID seasons where I think like a Bills lineman played on one team, played on the Bills, and then either got waived or was claimed off the practice squad by someone else and played on another playoff team a week later.
I don't remember that.
So there can be some shenanigans.
Who was that player?
It was just, someone not good enough to be on the 53-man roster or something like that.
That's the other thing, is what would be the incentive for Miami to release him once they're eliminated from the playoffs, other than some kind of verbal promise, some kind of goodwill gesture?
Yeah, keeping relationships good with the agents, making sure that you're keeping the front office accountable. I mean, obviously Calais is beloved wherever he goes, and so I don't think that you would want to risk any animosity or enmity by not holding to your word.
It's just one of those things where you don't, why release a guy when you can just hold on to him until he becomes released as a free agent in March. It's something you almost never see.
Right.
It's a weird thing. And frankly, it's good because you don't want to see it happen too often where like,
I mean, that's why the waiver wire exists. So you don't have teams just releasing guys who can join super teams.
Yeah. Who can just, join up with the Chiefs as a free agent right before the playoff starts. That wouldn't be fun for anybody. That's why in baseball, they have that rule that you have to be on the roster on September 1st in order to be in the playoffs, so that you don't have just this crazy mad scramble for players over the last
Always comes back to baseball with you.
Always comes back to baseball. You mentioned, you kind of teased there the other item on the wish list, and you had this on here about the Ravens week 18 game against the Cleveland Browns. We still don't know when that game is. Could be a Saturday, could be a Sunday, whatever time. But we've seen Dorian Thompson-Robinson start the last game or two for Cleveland, and it has not looked good. Similar to the last time the Ravens faced Dorian Thompson-Robinson, where they beat him 28-3. I like the kid's skills. I think I liked him coming out of UCLA. He's just not ready to be an NFL quarterback. Jameis Winston gives that team a better chance to win. I don't know what the incentive would be for the Browns to go back to Jameis Winston. I think they still are incentivized to see what they have in Dorian Thompson-Robinson. But I think the Ravens would rather face Dorian Thompson-Robinson in week 18 than face Jameis Winston.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry Jeudy, has turned into, or he did turn into, one of the NFL's best receivers with Jameis Winston's emergence. And
but
it was Jerry Jeudy.
His Madden rating isn't great. Ask Woody Johnson, about Jets owner, about the Madden rating.
I get my Jets information from Brick Johnson. The
owner's son.
Jerry Jeudy killed the Ravens, and so did Cedric Tillman in that week 9 game or whenever it was that the Ravens lost. So, I'm sure that if the Ravens saw Jameis Winston again, the couple interceptions that we saw the Ravens dropped would get turned around. Maybe, we'd even see a pick six. I imagine that the floor is probably lower with Jameis Winston than it is with DTR. But, I think if you're playing the variance game, you don't want someone who has the skill and the ability and the ceiling to really mess up your season
and the history of beating you.
Yeah. And DTR is still not a good quarterback. The Ravens should feel really confident about going up against him, because when they did last year in that weird situation where the Browns scratched Deshaun Watson right before that game in Cleveland, he was just a total mess. The Ravens sacked him, picked him off. Obviously, it's a different system, different coordinator now, but I think the Ravens would be, probably be like 9-10 point favorites if it's DTR at this point in week 18.
Yeah, especially at home. DTR in that last game, 20 for 34 for only 157 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks, 5 sacks. So,
against the Bengals, right?
Against the Bengals.
Yeah.
The Bengals defense that is horrendous. Speaking of the Bengals, they're on your Christmas wish list for the Ravens. This was an interesting thought experiment, Jonas.
Do you think, or do we think that the Bengals making the playoffs, even though I think most Ravens fans would probably enjoy the schadenfreude of seeing Cincinnati waste that season with Joe Burrow, at what point, like at what level of possibility of the Bengals being in the playoffs and beating the number 2 seed would it make it tolerable?
Do you think they're capable of beating the Bills if the Bills are the 2 seed?
We saw the Bills struggle against the Patriots yesterday at home.
I know. But so you think that the Bengals would have the better opportunity, the better chance of beating the Bills in Buffalo than, say, the current 7 seed, which is the Broncos? I think so. I mean, the ceiling of that offense is certainly higher. I just think you're playing with fire when you invite kind of a wild card and a super powerful offense into the playoffs. Because let's say they do beat the Bills, the Ravens maybe eventually have to face the Bengals again.
Well, if the Ravens, let's say if the Ravens get the number 3 seed,
sure,
and they win, and the Bengals get the number 7 seed and they beat the number 2 seed, well, the Ravens get a divisional round home playoff game too because of how the reseeding goes.
True. But then do they face they face the worst team or no, the Chiefs face the worst team remaining because they're the 1 seed. Then the Ravens face the second worst team remaining, and the odds,
which would be like either the Texans or the Steelers, probably.
Right. So the 7 seed has to beat the 2 seed and then the 1 seed in order to advance to the AFC Championship game. That is incredibly daunting. The idea of any team doing that.
Say it again.
Do the 7 seed in the playoffs because they would have to beat the 2 seed
because of how it gets reseeded after every round.
That is so incredibly difficult to do. Imagine having to beat the 2-seeded Bills and then the 1-seeded Chiefs on the road, back-to-back games. And then like the Ravens are meeting you in the AFC Championship.
Yeah, but like this is no one's idea of a powerhouse number 1 seed. I mean, the Chiefs have been vulnerable for so many weeks now, and I mean, like obviously it's a very different.
They're still 14-1.
I know it's a very different Bengals team right now than the one that almost beat Kansas City in like week 3 or week 4 or whenever it was. But still, they hung with them.
Yeah.
I think this Bengals defense is still pretty trash, but you have some guys who can make plays. With Trey Hendrickson, maybe you get some good interception luck, some good turnover luck, and then having Orlando Brown healthy potentially for a stretch run, Amarius Mims maybe developing into a piece, and then just turn that offense into just a goal ball based attack where it's just chucking it up to Jamar Chase, chucking up to T. Higgins. Maybe you get some good games from Yoshivas and Mike Gesicki. I mean, we know what Joe Burrow can do when he is hot, and it can be kind of breathtaking. So I know if I were probably the Bills and I'm locked into that number 2 seed, I would much rather face Bo Nix and a much improved, much better, Broncos defense than possibly play with fire and Joe Burrow.
That's fair. I just think whoever gets that 7 seed is going to be awfully difficult to knock off both the Bills and the Chiefs in succession and kind of help the Ravens. The Ravens have to worry about their own business. But facing the Bengals would also scare me. Like, I know I would much rather face the Bengals than I would the Chiefs or the Bills in the playoffs, but the Ravens barely beat the Bengals twice this season. One game went to overtime and the other one came right down to the wire.
Yeah, I guess I just think about it from a 30,000 foot view. If you're wondering, is it to the Ravens' benefit? Are you concentrated more on that divisional round matchup or AFC Championship game matchup? Because I
can't think too far ahead.
Yeah, but like, how much better? Like how much better of a chance does, let's say, Houston have, or the Pittsburgh Steelers have of beating the number 1 seeded Chiefs at home than the Bengals?
Right.
You know what I mean? Wouldn't you rather have take your chances with the Bengals as that possible spoiler in the number 7 seed against the number 2 seed role? If that means that you're possibly getting another home playoff game and avoiding the Bill together.
I also just think we've talked about it since even before the season started, the similarities between this current Ravens team and the 2012 Ravens team that went to New Orleans and won the Super Bowl, obviously. And a large part of that was the 2011 Ravens faced the Patriots in the playoffs and lose a low-scoring, close game. And then they faced the Patriots again in the playoffs the following year, and a team that was frankly not as good, a 10-6 team. and they beat them in the playoffs and go to the Super Bowl. And it just feels like it's lining up again for the Ravens to once again face the best quarterback in football. Then it was Tom Brady. Now it's Patrick Mahomes. And to face the one team that has had their number in the playoffs, face the Chiefs again in the playoffs. I mean, I'm getting way ahead of, we're fantasizing here way too much, but it would be, I mean, it would still be, you want to face the more favorable matchup in the playoffs, but it would be just an incredible storyline for the Ravens to go back to the AFC Championship game and have to face the Chiefs again.
Yeah, I'm already getting sick to my stomach of like
Mahomes?
the comparisons of this team to 2012.
Come on, and you can delight in it.
I can delight in it. It's just going to be, you know, when you see the same storyline over and over again, and you get the you know, playing along with it quote from John Harbaugh, and when he doesn't really actually care about, you know, I mean, he cares about what that team did, but this is so far removed from that team, and you're getting just random quotes from old Ravens who, you know, are clinging on to their glory days and probably haven't watched more than a couple, you know, minutes of this team, don't know the dynamics or anything. It's just going to be one of those things that we all kind of have to grin and bear it if this team does what that team did.
It's still more tolerable than all of the Mahomes Taylor Swift stuff from a year ago. So, all right, word of the day today, Jonas. You picked a phrase instead of a word, and frankly, I don't even know if we can read out the definition.
I thought you were gonna say we should say the word, but just bleep it.
The word itself is not obscene.
Yeah, it's Netflix and chill. But we were thinking Netflix then chill because this is a Netflix game on Wednesday, first of its kind. We hope that the Netflix servers are up for the hundreds of millions of people who are going to be watching this in a way that they could not watch the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight. But then, you know, after this Netflix game, the Ravens get a week and a half off. And that is a nice thing considering, again, this is going to be third game in 11 days. They've already put their bodies through hell in a season that's going to be 17 games long. So if there's anyone who deserves to Netflix and chill, it's the Ravens.
Yeah. What's your favorite Netflix show of all time? Do you have a number one?
I think the show that's probably brought me the most joy and that I've returned to the most is Dairy Girls. Just
it's a good one.
I love
my sister loves that
Dairy Girls. Drama, maybe Mindhunter.
Mindhunter's good. Yeah. Creepy. Very creepy.
Black Mirror was kind of an OG.
Yeah. I haven't watched the recent seasons, but I did like some of the original episodes.
Yeah.
I like BoJack Horseman. Big fan of that show. Stranger Things. Still waiting for season 5
I think
whatever.
I think they just finished shooting the last season.
That's exciting. The kids are going to be like 30 by the time they...
It's gonna be like the OC, where you had like 31-year-olds playing 17-year-olds. Did you ever see Dark?
No, I saw a lot of ads for it.
Yeah,
is it like sci-fi or something?
It's a sci-fi with Germans, and the main character's name is Jonas.
Oh, well, there you go, made for you. All right, Ravens are facing this Texans team at 4:30 on Christmas on Netflix. Texans team they beat twice last year. You may recall, Week 1 they crushed them 23-9, and then they faced them again in the divisional round when CJ Stroud was a rookie, and they crushed them again, 34-10. Ravens are favored by 4 points in this game. We're going to get a Beyonce halftime show. Favorite Beyonce song, Jonas?
I'm hoping for a medley. That's something that touches on just the scope of her career. I'm thinking back to, I mean, she's been in our lives basically since we were kids.
Destiny's Child.
Yeah. I loved 03 Bonnie and Clyde, the collaboration with Jay-Z, who she may or may not be cohabitating with nowadays. Halo, just a song that you love.
1.6 billion views on YouTube.
That's insane. Say My Name from the Destiny's Child's days, and then All Night from Lemonade, which is a great album.
You had several prepared. Countdown, I think, is good. Love on Top. Let's hear some good ones. All right. Let's look at this Houston Texans team, because it is very banged up coming into this game. Obviously, the headline-grabbing injury on Saturday was Tank Dell going down with an absolutely brutal injury. He was hospitalized overnight with a dislocated kneecap. You tend to think that is going to be season-ending, but in any case, he's not going to play in this game. That definitely damages their passing attack, and in a year where CJ Stroud is not quite as good as he was last year, that's going to hurt.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just the Tank Dell of it all, but of course they already lost Terps great Stephon Diggs to a season-ending injury in October.
Yep.
They have Nico Collins back, but he was of course missing for a little bit there. John Mechie was limited in practice Sunday, was inactive against the Chiefs. He has only 182 yards, but if it's going to be Nico Collins and X is Robert Woods, who has 143 yards this year. So it is a very, very, very
Robert
thin,
Woods.
very, very, very thin wide receiver group. Obviously,
Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, he might honestly be a possibility. I was just reading some of the local Texans coverage, and they mentioned him as a guy who could possibly be in play because this Texans offense just does not have a whole lot. I mean, obviously, Dalton Schultz is a perfectly fine tight end, but if it is just one guy that the Ravens have to worry about, it's Nico Collins. I mean, no one else on this receiving core, I think, is even like Calvin Austin level good.
Right. And on the Ravens side for injuries, such a quick turnaround between a Saturday game and a Wednesday game. It's pretty absurd. Justice Hill has that concussion that he suffered in that Saturday win. Jalen Armour-Davis was out with a hamstring. These are estimated because of it being a walkthrough. And then a couple other names on the injury list: Zay Flowers, Daniel Faalele. What'd you hear about these guys?
Yeah, John was optimistic that both would be available to play on Wednesday. Zay showed up in the locker room yesterday with his right arm in a sling. So it's a little bit tough to reconcile that with John's optimism about him. But,
Rashad Bateman was walking around with a boot on his foot and then played and caught a beautiful touchdown.
Yeah, and Faalele was limited in practice last week with the knee injury, and he played, and I think played pretty well. Tre'Davious White also did not play. I know that Brent Stevens has had his issues in coverage, but I still think that you want his athleticism matched up against a guy like Nico Collins more than Tre'Davious White, who's been through it physically and is definitely not what he once was athletically. He played through the fourth quarter, but dealing with the shoulder that held him out of practice on Sunday. So we'll know more in a couple hours as for his availability. And obviously, Nelson Aguilar still sidelined by the concussion. So we'll see. Maybe he's a guy who is hopefully going through the last stages of the concussion protocol and could be available to go against this very, very good Texans defense.
All right, well, let's talk about the Texans defense before we flip over to the offense, because that is the better unit. First in DVOA, first in pass, third against the run. D'Amico Ryans is just an outstanding defensive coach. We knew that when they hired him last year. That defense was vaunted last year, and they're probably even better this year. They've got blue chippers at kind of every level of the defense. They've got Will Anderson, who was a top 5 pick a year or so ago, Danielle Hunter, defensive end, and Derek Stingley, who's another top 5 pick, outstanding cornerback. So they've got playmakers everywhere, and they're an elite unit.
Yeah, but they're an elite unit that's, stop me if you've heard this before, an elite unit that's missing a lot of really good pieces.
Yeah.
Will Anderson showed up on the injury report yesterday with a hand injury, which was a new injury. Did not practice. We'll see if that is something that is serious. They are missing Jalen Petrie, who was their starting nickelback. They replaced him with Jimmy Ward, another good nickelback. He got hurt as well. Both those guys are probably done for the year or close to it. Another situation for D'Amico Ryans, who was asked about it yesterday, who didn't really have any answers for like how you go about replacing those guys. So a potential hole in that defense. Of course, they're also without Azeez Al-Shaair, who got suspended 3 games for that hit on Trevor Lawrence. So the spine of this defense is definitely less than it was a couple of weeks ago. They're also dealing with some injuries up the middle with one of their starting defensive tackles, having missed the game against the Chiefs, didn't practice on Saturday, didn't practice on Sunday. So even though edge rush talent is still elite, Derek Stingley, elite, Kamari Laster, their rookie cornerback, having a very good season. You wonder, based on what the Chiefs were able to do, not just running the ball, but passing the ball, is this group a little less, a little more vulnerable than you'd expect from a team that's number 1 DVOA?
And the Ravens obviously faced an outstanding pass rush 2 days ago, against the Steelers. And it's a quick turnaround from there. You hope that Daniel Faalele is good to go for this game, because you just want as much depth as possible as you can get on that offensive line. There were times where the Steelers broke through, but overall, I think the Ravens offensive line did a pretty good job against them. And I think, for all of the gripes about Faalele and the guards pass blocking, which are, warranted, and even Roger Rosengarten has his struggles there, they still have been pretty good in terms of run grading. And so getting open lanes for Derrick Henry, allowing him to go off again like he did for 162 yards against the Steelers, will go a long way, I think, to making sure that this Ravens offense is balanced.
Yeah, but with D'Amico Ryans, I think that is the calling card. That's the you think of what he was able to do with those 49ers run defenses before he got in Houston, always stout against the run. Will Anderson is just an ass kicker as a run defender. Obviously, the linebacker situation behind him is now a little bit scary. But part of the reason the Ravens were able to handle Watt and Highsmith and Herbig was because they were running the ball so well. If you have that threat on early downs, then it's a little bit harder to kind of pin your ears back and get after the passer, because you don't know if Derrick Henry is going to be coming your way. You don't know if Lamar Jackson is going to be keeping on a zone read. So I think, as with any kind of game, you just want to avoid these obvious passing situations. I mean, I know it's small sample size, but with Will Anderson, Daniil Hunter, and Danico Autry on the field together, they've only played about 90 snaps together, 14 sacks. It's like a 16.5% sack rate, which is about double the league average. So
pretty good.
Autry is a guy who can kick inside. He's a defensive end by name, but he can just blow over kind of undersized guards. They don't do a whole lot in terms of disguising coverage. They don't do a lot of stunts, don't do a lot of simulated pressures. They just kind of play straight up football and try to physically bully you. And obviously that can maybe be an issue for some of these smaller wide receivers out wide. If Stingley and Classiter are kind of getting their hands on you, can Zay be press coverage? Can Rashad Bateman be press coverage? But I just feel like, because of these injuries, because of the short turnaround, the Ravens should probably be feeling better about this matchup than they otherwise would.
Not having Justice Hill for this game does make me a little bit concerned, just because he's been one of the more underrated players on this team all season long. What he does pass blocking wise and what he does as an outlet for Lamar Jackson. I mean, he flashed it a little bit on that play that he got hurt in, just what a weapon he can be coming out of the backfield. And quite frankly, the Ravens like to have him in obvious passing downs instead of Derrick Henry. I think in part to get Derrick Henry off of his feet, and part because Justice Hill is, as weird as it sounds for a guy who's much smaller than Derrick Henry, he's a better pass blocker. So not having him out there is going to be difficult. Do you imagine that the Ravens will turn more to fifth-round rookie Rasheen Ali? Or are we going to finally see more of Keaton Mitchell, our tiny horse, in there on Wednesday?
I think we'll probably see both those guys up.
Okay.
I guess it depends on how the Ravens feel about how they match up. I don't think you want Keaton Mitchell as a pass blocker.
Nah.
With all due respect to the short guys being able to stick their nose in there, I think you probably actually feel better about Derrick Henry being that third down back just because of how big and strong he is. So it's just a matter of how these guys are practicing. I mean, obviously, I think John Harbaugh had some encouraging words for Rasheen Ali based off the limited touches that he's gotten this year. But we know what Keaton Mitchell can do. So we'll see.
We do know what Keaton Mitchell can do. We just haven't seen it this year. I do wonder if this is just not a lost season for him, but it's just a recovery season for him, because we see that all the time with skill position players like running backs. It takes them an extra year to come back from a devastating lower body injury like the one that he suffered. So, while his stats at the end of this year are not going to look great, I do still think that he can be a factor in 2025. And, once he gets an extra year back under his legs. All right, let's talk about the Ravens defense against this Texans offense, because CJ Stroud has regressed in some slight ways this year. He isn't quite the world beater that perhaps was, shined in his rookie season last year. And it's also coming at a time where Bryce Young is having a resurgence for the Panthers. I mean, at this point last year, we were talking about what an absolute disaster it was that the Panthers traded up and took Bryce Young. Bryce Young's been playing okay football.
Yeah.
Looks like he's probably going to stay there as the starter in Carolina for an extra year. So it's evened out a little bit. I think you'd still much rather have CJ Stroud than you would Bryce Young. But I do think that conversation, it's not as much as a landslide as it looked a year ago between those two top drafted quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, this offense just has been straight up not good. They are 24th in DVOA. They don't do anything well. They're 24th in passing, 27th in rushing, and like the Texans offense that the Ravens manhandled last year, finished the 2013 14th. And that was the kind of start of the what will now apparently be probably be a pretty brief flirtation with Bobby Slowick as head coaching material. I mean, this just has not been a good year for that Texans offense. They can't run the ball. They can't protect CJ Stroud. I think he's been sacked more than any quarterback who's not named Caleb Williams. The offensive line that was supposed to come together has not come together. They moved the right tackle to left guard. What's his face? Larry Matunzel, who is their most talented lineman, their starting left tackle, has, I think, the most penalties in the NFL this year. That they lost, I think, Kenyon Green. They lost starting right guard Shaq Mason to a knee injury versus the Chiefs. He's likely going to be out against the Ravens. Juice Scruggs, who started at center and left guard for them, is still sidelined by a foot injury. So this is not the offensive line that Texans fans imagined when they started the season. And even when those guys were healthy and available, they weren't very good. So I just don't see a way for, one, the Texans to establish any kind of running game, even though Joe Mixon has had some nice games this year. And two, keep CJ Stroud upright with any regularity.
Yeah, I mean, are we going to see a multi-sack game from like Kyle Van Noy, who's already over 10.5 sacks so far this season?
It's possible.
It's possible. Odafe Oweh still has had moments this year. I was hoping that he was going to finally, he's been a close but no cigar kind of pass rusher for the first several years of his career. And you still see moments where he's able to push the pocket. He's able to get pressure, and he just can't finish with the sack. We saw that a few times on Saturday. I know he's having a much, he's hit a career high in sacks with 8, I believe, so far this year.
Yep.
But would like to see Odafe Oweh just feel good about actually bringing a quarterback down on the ground, because he's athletic enough, he's strong enough, he's getting the push, he's getting in the backfield. Just bring the guy down.
Yeah, I mean, didn't do much against the Giants, didn't do much against the Steelers. But I think he'll have plenty of chances, because this is a Texans offense that I believe leads the league in third and longs this year. They face something like over 100 3rd and 7 pluses. And shocker, when CJ Stroud does not have to worry about these obvious passing situations, he's a lot better. On 3rd and 6 or less this season, he's averaged positive EPA, 62% accuracy, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. So he's been, a upper third, upper half quarterback. On 3rd and 7 or less, which again, he's seen more than any quarterback in the league, he basically becomes Will Levis. minus 0.19 EPA per dropback, 57% accuracy, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. And again, that has been
or longer, you mean?
Yeah, 3rd and 7 or longer. And again, that has been with Stephon Diggs, that has been with Tank Dell. He has neither of those guys. He might not even have John Mechie. So I am reluctant to say this because of all the small sample size predictions that I've made for this year. I feel like I've turned out incredibly poorly. Like I thought the Ravens would be able to handle the Bengals without T. Higgins, and they allowed 500 yards, 200 yards to Jamar Chase. Yeah, the Ravens would have no problem against a George Pickens-less Steelers offense, and they were in fact more efficient than they were in Week 11. All that being said, 32 dropbacks for CJ Stroud this year without Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, or John Mechie, but with Nico Collins. So basically about a game's worth of dropbacks. 17 for 28, 132 yards, 3 sacks, 57.4 passer rating. Not to say that's going to happen on Wednesday, but if you are extrapolating from that wildly, you would have to feel really, really good about where the Ravens are.
Did you predict before the season that CJ Stroud would win the MVP?
Somebody might have.
Somebody did.
Definitely considered it.
On our preseason predictions on the BaltimoreBanner.com, where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months. Somebody also did predict Josh Allen. I think that might have been Brandon Weigel, our editor.
I think I either predicted Stroud to win MVP or for the Texans to win the Super Bowl.
Some absolute numbskull picked the Cleveland Browns to win the division. Simply couldn't fathom who that might be. What's your score prediction for this game, Jonas? For this Jonas game?
I think the Ravens. It's tough to make predictions for games that are in this weird of a schedule with this weird of a compressed timeline. But I just like where the Ravens are offense. I think they were able to do a lot of creative stuff with the run game. They did enough with the passing game. I think if Zay Flowers is good to go, they should feel pretty good about where they stand. Even if they don't, I still think they can get away with Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, Isaiah Likely, the screen game. So I'm picking Ravens 28-13 in Houston. If this game comes down to a field goal, it would not surprise me. I think the Ravens are only favored by 4, right? I think we didn't mention that up top, but this is a really, really good Texans defense. They have, shown themselves to be really good. Just a couple weeks ago, they shut down a surging Miami Dolphins offense earlier in the season. I think they held the Lions to about 23, 26 points. So when they've been healthy, and again, that is the big caveat in all this, they have been a lights out defense. But how equipped are they to stop this run game, and how can they kind of handle the middle of that defense when they're missing their starting linebacker, they're missing their 2 starting slot cornerbacks against this offense that with Lamar has no compunction whatsoever about throwing over the middle.
And 13 points offensively would tie for the second lowest output that the Texans have put up this year. They're kind of a confusing team. I mean, early on, it looked like they were 5-1 to start the season, and it looked like they were ready to roll it back and to head back into the playoffs and maybe, advance farther. And then they hit a string of losses, and quite frankly, they've had some inexcusable losses. I mean, I think they lost they lost at the Jets. They lost to the Titans. It's hard to make sense of this Houston team. I'm also going to predict a Ravens win. However, I'm going to say 30-20. I think that the Ravens offense is rolling. I did say after last week's win that if the Ravens, or before that game rather, I said if the Ravens beat the Steelers on Saturday, they would not lose again until at least February. I'm going to have to stick by that. I'm going to have to keep picking them until they show me otherwise.
You feel free to dig your own grave.
I'll go down with the ship. We will have another episode. You're going to be in Houston on Wednesday, and we'll have another episode after that game. Say hi to Noah Eagle, who's going to be on the broadcast for me. I once trained a young Noah Eagle at my radio station at Syracuse. I taught him everything he knows.
So you know where the bodies are buried.
Exactly. Also, definitely didn't learn anything from his dad. Learned everything from me. Just remember that when you listen to him on The Call on Netflix. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please do like, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. One quick more word from our
Don't miss the 2025 CIAA Men's and Women's Basketball Tournament in Baltimore, February 25th to March 1st at CFG Bank Arena. Watch HBCU teams battle to be crowned champion. Check out the free fan fest and performances at the Baltimore Convention Center. Enjoy downtown's top restaurants and stay in one of our amazing hotels. The CIAA Men's and Women's Basketball Tournament. You want to be here.
All right, everybody, enjoy Netflix, then chilling in that order. Don't do it at the same time.
Netflix and chill responsibly, America.
Exactly. Merry Christmas, everybody. Enjoy the holidays, and we'll see you again. Are we going to see them before 2025, before the new year? Probably not, because New Year's Day is a week from Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
And I think we're probably setting up for a January 2nd podcast, most likely.
What day
we'll do our post-game podcast on Wednesday. And then our Browns preview will come on Thursday, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we don't know when week 18 will be. A week after the 25th would be the 2nd of January.
Yeah.
So
maybe we're podcasting that day. We have no idea.
Yeah.
We will definitely be with you, though, on Christmas Day night. So tune in for that episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Jonas Shaffer, I'm Paul Mancano.